Wednesday, September the 25th. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief. Well, it's a beautiful Wednesday morning, I must say. I'm Kayode Okikiodu.
Yes, it's Wednesday of strength, of course. You have every reason to be strong and keep pushing. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief. I am Bukola Koka.
Goodness me, social media has sort of gone haywire. It's not like another day in the office for social media, but this particular one is quite interesting because it pulls together different personalities and institutions. What am I talking about? Well, I'll tell you the story from maybe the latest event. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission yesterday put out a statement to the effect that it is investigating a 15 million naira Bobrisky allegation against EFCC officers. They see that statement put out on EFCC's social media handle. And a lot of people are wondering, wait a minute, what is going on here? Well, this dates back to months ago. You recall that Bobrisky, whose real name is Okunaye, was arrested, detained, and eventually sent to jail for issues around money laundering and then abuse of the naira and the rest. And he did time according to what we were told, and he was eventually released. But in a video that was put out by Martins Vincent Ose, whom we all know as Very Dark Man, he alleged, while playing an audio said to be Bobrisky's voice, that he paid 15 million naira to some EFCC officials. He didn't serve time in a proper jail, served the time in an apartment. He even mentioned names of legal luminary Femi Falana and his son, Fowles. And it's just a lot really to wrap your head around. But we can tell you that EFCC has asked both of them, that's Very Dark Man and Bobrisky, to appear at their Lagos office, to assist in investigation. But come on, it's really a lot, as I said, Bukola, because a lot of people are now questioning things they thought they knew. First, about him serving time. If that audio that was leaked is indeed true, does that mean he didn't serve time in jail and served in an apartment? Some have said, well, the idea of pardon is not a big deal, right? This is something that is known to law. You can seek pardon. There's a presidential pardon. Governors even grant pardon and the rest. But there are contexts to issues of pardon. So I know a lot of people are divided and all of that, but it's important to ensure that these allegations are investigated from the police to the correctional service to the EFCC and others who are mentioned. I think that's a list that people deserve right now.
Well, it would be instructive, to just take a quick look at the statement, particularly the reaction of the EFCC. The second to the last paragraph says, in a swift reaction, the EFCC's boss has constituted a team of investigators to critically look at the allegations. And to this end, the commission hereby invites both Okunaye and Ose, that will be Very Dark Black Man, to make themselves available. I guess, both social media influencers were fully aware of what they were getting into when they put out that video containing those allegations. So if they're able to prove the allegations, it would be very, very revealing to see the outcome and the consequences, particularly if they can make evidence available to prove their allegations. But as far as, what you give life, oxygen to, with your social media platforms, this is a lesson to a lot of people. When we give oxygen to certain things in the past, we have seen how it went south and people making public apologies about what, they commented on. Sometimes people say, and there's a lot of wisdom in it as well, that, your social media platform is a sort of CV. It's a representative of everything that you stand for. So caution should be applied. If this was to, gain little moments of fame, and then we'll see how it goes as well. But it's a developing story, and we'll keep our eyes on it.
So definitely, that's something we'll get to tell you about as the events unfold. So a Very Dark Black Man, Bobrisky, meant to appear before the EFCC today to assist in investigation. So we'll tell you how that goes. Definitely. So stay with us right here on Channels Television. But what do we have for you on the morning brief today? Well, we're talking national issues. Two major economic indices shot up on the same day. One hand, in a bid to reduce inflation, the Central Bank of Nigeria has increased lending rates, call it interest rate, call it the monetary policy rate. So yes, the central bank has increased that. And on the same day, the MBS released data about unemployment rate also going up as well. So things are going up. It's not just the prices that you readily know. These two rates have also been going up. So how do these two events come together to really affect you? That is a question we'll be seeking answers to today.
Talking about rates, we'll be checking on rates also in other sectors. Airfares have also been going up, just like the aircraft, and Nigerians have had to adjust or abandon domestic air travel altogether. But what's the story behind this seemingly unending flight in prices, and how can we bring it to land safely? And that's not all. We'll also be looking at infrastructure issues and airline operations in that sector as well. So join us for that conversation.
Plus, as always, we're tracking all the major talking points across social media, and your comments are up soon, right after the top stories, so keep them coming in #CTV Morning Brief. Have you heard about the Bribery matter? That's Idris Okunai. Let us know what you think about it. A very black man's video talking about that, the names that have been mentioned, the roles allegedly played. Let us know about it, and as well as other issues which we'll tell you about on the show this morning. That's just a matter of 10 to 15 minutes. But what we're starting off with is a very top story. Nigeria is at the UN General Assembly. A speech has been given. What is the content of that speech, as well as other issues of national importance? That's just a few seconds. So stay with us right here. It's a morning brief. Our top stories at this hour will begin at the UN General Assembly, where President Bola Tinubu has called on world leaders to recommit themselves to multilateralism by deepening relations among member states of the United Nations in line with the principles of inclusivity, equality, and cooperation. But this, he said, is the surest guarantee of global action against existential challenges faced by the international community. Represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima at the high-level annual global event, the president decried what he described as the steep descent into singularity and nationalism, which, according to him, are undermining the quest for peaceful and collective resolution of global challenges such as terrorism, climate change, poverty, food crisis, hyperinflation, nuclear proliferation, and grinding debt burden, among others.
As you assume the leadership of this august assembly, our world is confronted by profound moral questions that will require more than the habitual remarks from this elevated podium to resolve. These are questions about the ultimate purpose of our organization, the United Nations itself, and how it can remain relevant and resilient. It is with this sentiment that I convey to you the warm and fraternal greetings of my countrymen and women. Mr. President, the theme of this year's General Assembly leaves us in no doubt that there is still work to be done to bridge the gap between the aspirations and the realities confronting our world today. It also underscores the need to remind ourselves that the United Nations stands for inclusiveness, anchored on the tripod of peace, sustainable development, and human rights. Today, these pillars of our organization are threatened. They risk being broken by the relentless pursuit of individual national priorities rather than the collective needs of the nations that are assembled here today. While commitment to multilateralism offers us the surest guarantee of global action to address the existential challenges we face, singularity and nationalism are undermining the aspirations towards a peaceful and collective resolution of such challenges.
Well, back home, the Central Bank of Nigeria has further raised its monetary policy rate MPR by 50 basis points to 27.25% from 26.75% to moderate inflation, which stands at 32.15%. But this was revealed by the CBN Governor, Olayemi Cardoso, after the Apex Bank's 297th Monetary Policy Committee meeting held on 23rd and 24th in Abuja to review recent economic and financial development as well as assess its outlook for the year. He argued that the multiple hikes in interest rates in the last 1 year since he assumed office as CBN boss have helped to moderate inflation.
Between 2015 and 2023, the past 8 years, witnessed an incredible amount of pumping of liquidity into the system. In other words, you had a situation where the response to excess money supply, little foreign exchange available, was to fix exchange rates, okay? Which now resulted in multiple exchange rates and arbitrage opportunities between one and the other, okay? And of course, this in itself resulted in a backlog of foreign exchange, because this is where all these things have come from. And sometimes people forget that this is the context in which we came into the saddle of the central bank.
Well, more rate increase, but this time, the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, says Nigeria's unemployment rate increased to 5.3% in the first quarter of the year. According to reports, the NBS said the unemployment rate increased compared to the 5% recorded in Q3 of last year. However, no data was provided for the fourth quarter of 2023. To the agency, the unemployment rate is the share of a labor force, which is a combination of unemployed and employed people who are not employed but actively searching and are available for work. It also released Nigeria's employment to population ratio, a key workforce participation measure, saying it declined in the first quarter of the year. President Bola Tinubu has declined assent to a bill seeking to extend the tenure of the service of legislative officers at the National Assembly, those are the staff, as well as the 36 state houses of assembly from 35 to 40 years, and their retirement age from 60 to 65 years. The president's declined assent was conveyed in a letter read on the floor of the Senate by the president of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio. The harmonized retirement age bill was first stepped down in February for further research and consultation with stakeholders after a significant number of senators voted against it.
In respect of the harmonized retirement age for the legislative officers of the National Assembly of the Federal Republic of Nigeria bill, passed by the National Assembly and forwarded to me for assent. Upon thorough examination and careful consideration, I have decided to withhold my assent to the bill. This decision is made in accordance with the powers vested in me by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Well, the chamber suspended plenary to today over the death of one of its own senators. Well, let's go over to the court now, where the detained leader of indigenous people of Biafra, Mazin Nnamdi Kanu, has asked Justice Binta Nyako of the Federal High Court, Abuja, to recuse herself from his trial. At the resumed hearing, Mr. Kanu spoke from the dock on the 7-count terrorism charge preferred against him by the federal government. While his lawyer, Mr. Aloy Ejimako, was trying to persuade the court to suspend the trial on the basis that his client was denied the opportunity to prepare his defense, Mr. Kanu got up to address the court on why the judge should recuse herself. And more stories now. The federal government has approved the revision of the consolidated public service salary structure for lecturers of tertiary institutions, the police, armed forces, medical and health services, as well as other civil servants, with effect from July the 24th. The chairman of the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission, Mr. Epunta, told journalists at a news conference in Abuja that consequent upon the enactment of the National Minimum Wage Act and the Memorandum of Understanding reached between the federal government and the trade union, the federal government will pay the new minimum wage from July the 29th, while other categories of people to benefit from the new minimum wage and salary structure revision include pensioners and members of the National Youth Service Corps.
Consequent upon the enactment of the National Minimum Wage Amendment Act 2024 and the Memorandum of Understanding reached by the Committee on consequential adjustments in salaries arising from the National Minimum Wage Act between the federal government of Nigeria and the trade union sides of the Joint National Public Service Negotiating Council on Friday, 20th September 2024. The President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, has approved the revision of the Consolidated Public Service Salary Structure with effect from the 29th of July 2024. The Commission wishes to clarify that the effective date for the commencement of the national minimum wage is the 29th of July 2024. As that was the day Mr. President assented to the Act after the bill was forwarded to him by the National Assembly. At this point, I would like to state that any agency in the Federal Public Service, whether it's self-funded or treasury-funded, that has not received any circular on this matter, specifically from this Commission, should contact the Commission for further directives. This is to avoid any uncoordinated implementation.
Other stories, no fewer than 12 persons have died as a result of the outbreak of cholera, which ravaged 4 local government areas of Adamawa State. Confirming the outbreak at a media briefing in Yola, the Adamawa State capital, Commissioner for Health Felix Tengwami reveals that over 300 persons were hospitalized and 244 discharged so far. The Nigerian Army has debunked claims of acts of cyberbullying and sexual harassment leveled against Colonel Ishaku Abdulkarim and other personnel by ex-Private Ruth Ogunleye on the social media. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the Director of Army Public Relations, Major General Onyema Wachuku, denies ex-Private Ruth Ogunleye's claims against Colonel Abdulkarim and other senior officers, whom he says have been exonerated by the report of a panel. Speaking further, General Wachuku explains that the former soldier was discharged June the 14th, 2024, after a medical examination that declared her unfit to continue serving as a soldier. And more business news. The governor of the central bank, Mr. Olaimi Cardoso, has announced plans to inject about 1.4 trillion naira to boost cash flow into the country. Mr. Cardoso says the move will be backed by strict monitoring on all deposit money banks to ensure compliance for ease of withdrawals at ATM points. The Apex Bank governor, who was responding to questions after the MPC meeting in Abuja, explains that total cash in circulation is about 4 trillion naira. And on the foreign scene, the UN chief has warned world leaders that Lebanon was on the brink as clashes between Israel and Hezbollah escalate ahead of U.S. President Joe Biden's final appearance at the global body's signature annual event. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said all leaders should be alarmed by the escalation. The gathering of dozens of world leaders, the high point of a diplomatic calendar, comes as Lebanese authorities say Israeli strikes killed 558 people, 50 of them children. But later on, Israel's defense minister then accused UN Secretary General of failing to prevent Hezbollah attacks on Israel, saying the UN is neither acknowledging the actions for fulfilling its fundamental obligation. In sports news, the 2027 Champions League final will be moved away from the San Siro in Milan. That's due to uncertainties over potential renovations, UEFA said on Tuesday. European football's governing body said that the San Siro had lost the showpiece fixture as the city of Milan could not guarantee the ground and the surrounding area would not be affected by refurbishment works. AC Milan and Inter Milan, who both play their home matches at the San Siro this month, rejected a project to modernize and restructure the iconic stadium, which is owned by the city of Milan. Well, those are the major top stories at this hour, but what have you been saying about other issues trending? Bukola joins me to walk through the very interesting streets of social media. Bukola.
Yes, indeed, Kadi. Nigerians have been talking more about the economy, but also about other issues from sexual harassment to the bizarre this morning. But let's start with the economy, and which is also going to form our talking point later on. The Central Bank of Nigeria increases interest rate to 27.25%. And this first one is from Richie, who says, if Cardoso is serious on bringing down the inflation inflation rate, he should have increased interest rates to at least 40% by now. Of course, we get it. That's quoted with sarcasm. The inflation would have been cooling by now. It will be difficult and will bite the economy and citizens so hard, but that is the way to go. Really?
Next user, Avocado, says, I think they did that to control the inflation a bit, but the issue is what happens to businesses, SMEs that need loans to thrive. They now have to pay more to service debt. If I'm correct, that's the caveat this user put there. Remember the billionaire Aliko Dangote also speaking about the effect of interest rates on businesses who have to provide employment. Can you imagine how small businesses feel right now? That's what you have.
If the big captain of industry, richest man in Africa, can complain about interest rate, who knows? It's left to the imagination how small businesses are coping. This one is from Dowman, who says the CBN's rate hike to 27.25% could strain struggling businesses. Could strain or is already straining struggling businesses by increasing borrowing costs, limiting access to credit, and heightening debt burdens. This may force some to cut costs, scale back operations, or seek alternative funding to survive. Or this could even cost some to say, look, I'm done. I'm just going to leave this business and look for greener pastures elsewhere.
It's a very tricky one. So the options are always, they look simple. There are always three options. So either hold, to tighten, or free it. Those are usually the three options. And this is how it works. There's always a voting done between members of the Monetary Policy Committee. So it's not just the CBN governor's decision. All the members on that committee vote. So those in favor of holding will vote. Those who want it to be tightened, that's increase it, they vote. Those who want to bring it down, I'm not sure how many people voted for that, but there's usually that breakdown. So that is what happens behind the scenes. And then the CBN governor comes out to announce what the decision of the MPC, that's the committee, is, and not the CBN. But of course, those points are taken. What are the factors that went into this decision? What will it do to businesses? Those issues will be condensing for you very soon on the show. So stay with us right here, and we'll tell you how that goes. But take a look at what a billionaire businessman Aliko Dangote has to say about petrol subsidy. He granted an interview to Bloomberg where he spoke about different things, said he regrets buying Arsenal. Right?
Not buying Arsenal.
Not buying Arsenal. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I said it's not as liquid anymore. So
you won't be able to make that investment.
So I imagine maybe trying to say, maybe I should have done this refineries and maybe I should have bought Dangote. But that's just one of the several things he said. But one of the other things he said, which concerns you and I, is about subsidy, saying that it's time for FG to remove petrol subsidy. So what is clear from that is, well, subsidy is still ongoing, call it shortfall, under recovery, whatever, it is still on. And the first user, the Quora guy, says, it go shock you, and this had to be in pidgin just to push the message further. It go shock you, say, inside that subsidy, another subsidy, they inside. How many subsidy they won't remove now? Translation, this is says, it will shock you that inside the subsidy, there may be another subsidy inside that subsidy. So one is how many subsidy will they remove for those who are not fluent in pidgin?
And, we should also read between the lines, because if you watched the interview, the question was asked in very clear terms, without any doubt, that the federal government was still paying subsidy. And, the businessman himself said subsidy has to go, such that Nigeria can be able to, very clearly quantify the measure of the petrol produced and consumed per day. And the federal government continues to deny that it's paying subsidy. I interviewed with the Minister of Finance just months ago. Minister of Finance didn't say particularly whether subsidy was being paid or not. So that speaks to the seeming lack of accountability in that space. And Nigerians deserve to know, what the nation's funds is being expended on. But, clearly what the businessman said, amongst other things, is quite revealing. And he also said his own petrol is cheaper than the petrol imported. So NNPCL, what's exactly the issue with that breakdown that you gave us about how much you're selling petrol from Dangote refinery for? But this next one, let's read it, is now from Olawo Infemi, who says, there's no country without a subsidized package for citizens. Fuel subsidy should still be but monitored and carried out with unbiased greedless mind, I believe. Well, a mind without greed is trying to say.
It's always a very interesting debate around subsidy. But let's move on to another talking point, and that's the one that concerns ex-private female soldier who accused a senior officer of sexual harassment. The military came out to say, well, she's been discharged after some medical tests were done, and then she was said to have been found unfit, saying that the panel was set up and the report vindicates the senior officers in question. But Nigerians have been speaking because this is a very major one. It concerns a lot of issues that give a lot of people PTSD. So they're hoping that this is not playing out in the military. Kaushal Koshwaha says that's a serious situation. Yes, you can say that again. It's concerning to see someone discharged after making such accusations, as it raises questions about how such cases are handled. This issue definitely needs careful investigation. And that's why we brought you the side of the military and, of course, the side of people now who are speaking to that. Again, I think there might need to be another look into that matter.
Absolutely, particularly because if, just in case it's true, it would deter others who may be experiencing same within the armed forces to come out and speak. But again, if it's not true, investigations also should be conducted further to determine what actually happened. But this next one is from Paul, who says maybe the evidence was not glaring enough. And indeed, anyone who has been assaulted and didn't obtain evidence immediately after the assault may be unable to prove the allegations of whatever kind of assault because of time factor. Well, Paul continues by saying that kind of fight, looking at the gap between the accused and the lady in the military, she needed outright and straight evidence to nail him. Anything short of that is a journey to nowhere.
There you have it. Those are your comments about these trending issues. Earlier on, we brought you what the EFCC had to say about the very dark man video, Bob Risky. So all eyes on the EFCC to see how the investigation goes, what comes out of the allegations of 15 million naira bribe to its officers. I will definitely be bringing you the updates to that one. But what do we have first for you on the show? Well, it's the economy, the twin rates that shot up, interest rates, unemployment rate. How do these rates play together to affect you and I? That's in a moment, and we have a round table on this one. So stay with us on the morning break.
Welcome back. And so we start off by checking on the economy as it affects you, as it affects everyone. And specifically, we're looking at the CBN's increase of CBN's Monetary Policy Committee increasing interest rate to 27.2%. And joining us to have this conversation this morning, we have Mr. Segun Omishakin. He's a chief economist, Nigeria Economic Summit Group, who joins us in our Lagos studio here. Good morning and welcome, Mr. Omishakin. We also have joining us via Zoom, Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel, who's an economist also. Good morning and welcome, Mr. Emmanuel.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's good to have you. So I'm going to start with Mr. Omishakin in the studio. So, this came as a surprise to economists who thought that, the CBN's NPC will slow down or pause at least the increase in interest rate, particularly with the minimal progress witnessed in inflation. So did this come as a surprise to you?
No. As a matter of fact, if you look at the success or the progress we've recorded in inflation rate, for me, I think that will be a kind of an incentive for the CBN to continue that trend. It is, MPR and the activities of CBN is within the overall macro environment. And so the CBN has its own mandate, which is purely around output and inflation. What happens outside of that cannot be within the purview of CBN. So I personally think that while the implications of increasing the rate, especially in this time where we have huge macro instability, is huge, but for me, I think this is still the best thing the CBN could do, especially at this very moment.
But when you consider that inflation has slowed, and in fact the CBN, amongst its many considerations, the governor spoke about it, don't you think that the progress that had been achieved in the last 2 months was enough for the CBN to now say, okay, perhaps we could reduce the measure of increase of the interest rate?
No, if you look at the general macro environment, you will know that though we have the inflation rate seems to be coming down, but the level is still extremely high. We are doing 32.2. That is not a huge success. So the CBN, as far as I'm concerned, will see that instrument of MPR as very, very important in bringing down the rate. And you look at it, it's not just about the inflation rate. The impact of inflation rate on the economy is more devastating when you compare that with what you have with the interest rate, right? So I think the CBN is on the right path, but it's unfortunate that on the macro side, there is no story. You can tell anybody anywhere, business environments and there's no story. So I think I will expect more actions from the fiscal side. If we leave the CBN as though they are the manager of the economy, we're going to run into this situation. We're going to have rates increasing every time, but the implication will also be very, very huge. So I think I expect more from the from the fiscal side in complementing what the CBN is doing. But the CBN is fixed. There is nothing you can do, especially at this moment, than making sure that you arrest inflation. We don't have enough production. Our productivity is weak, is low. We don't even have clarity as to what we're going to do to fool the inflation. So the CBN has no other option than to make sure that they continue increasing the rate, at least for the medium term, to sustain the minimum level of inflation.
All right. Let me take you to Mr. Emmanuel. I want you to also speak to the same issue specifically tell us whether the benefits outweigh the odds and the gains recorded also in the last 2 months. Is it really as a result of the increase of interest rates by the CBN's NPC over a period of 2 months, or more as a result of the fortuitous harvests that the country witnessed in the last few months as well?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that I was expecting that the members of the MPC were going to vote to hold and not to increase. You know, the slowdown we've had in the increase in the rate of inflation 2 months consecutively, owing to 22 straight months of increase in inflation from 2022 is a myriad of factors. You know, the harvest season has come. The 150-day waiver for food imports is beginning to kick in. And then you have, of course, some gains from like the inflation to interest yield curve alignment from increasing NPR, you know, that are seeing a lot of banks, especially, for example, GT Bank. Segun Agbaje was speaking about the 6 months ending June 2024 and talked about fair value gains on loans that are open and has pendency on it, because, you know, after every interest rate decision by the Monetary Policy Committee, banks are obligated to, within 10 days after the decision, to send a communication to their clients that are owing them money that there's been a change in interest rate. For example, in America, with the FOMC, you can see there was a 50 basis point cut. The banks in the US that are in consumer banking, because in America has a Glass-Steagall Act that separates investment banks.
When politics enters, the point is that we are not in a state where economics can actually work for us.
That's textbook.
Yeah, we are not in that current state now. We need to stabilize the system. And that's why the conversation must go beyond what the CBN does, what the fiscal side does, and we need to stabilize. We are badly heated, as in we are in a state where, just like he said, we have so many shocks in the system. Even when you reduce the NPR rate, that does not convert to having a reduced unemployment rate. We move from 4% to 5.2%. Just because it's below what people call natural rate of unemployment, still means that we are moving, right? So I think the challenge we have is this: there are trade-offs. You cannot hit your cake and still have it. These are simple trade-offs. And when you ask the CBN what the CBN could do, I believe so strongly what the CBN could do is what it's doing. The CBN cannot do beyond what we have now. I think we need to be having a better conversations around what the coordinating minister of the economy is doing. What is the state of our fiscal revenue? What are the plannings on a medium, MTNDP, medium-term national planning? How do we want to stabilize the system? And I think that's one of the reasons. This is one of the contexts why the Nigerian Economy Summit Group is coming up with this year's summit that focused on collaborative actions on growth, competitiveness, and stability. You can't achieve growth, competitiveness, and stability without some trade-offs, and they are obvious. You're going to have some moments of unemployment rate going up, but if we look, if we don't focus on what is important as at now, we keep going in that path. Let me tell you what is happening now concerning our output, our GDP. That we are weak in terms of productivity is obvious. We all know that. But currently, about 68% of the sectors of the contributions to GDP is driven by sectors who are currently doing below 5%. Those are sectors that are dragging the economy. And much more sectors who are doing below 0%, who are in the recession. And collectively, they contribute about 68% to GDP. So you have just the oil and gas that's coming up of recent, and finance contributing about maybe 30.1% to GDP. This is a bigger conversation. It doesn't matter how much we do with our, interventions there and there. If the elephant in the room is still as weak as we are experiencing now, we have a long way to go, and that is a focus of stabilizing the economy. We need to handle issues around competitiveness, the high cost of production, which we've talked to, interest rate increasing, inflation here and there. We need to talk about what are we doing with the production of our crude oil. Yes, we are doing relatively better now, but the conversation must look at the bigger picture. If we continue like this, I don't see us having a sustained growth that we've had now. We are doing 3.1, 3.2, H1 3.1 on the average. I don't see us continuing that trend. And so for me, my fear is that we seem not to be looking at what is happening at the fiscal side. And for me, that is where the magic lies. As I have said also, that is where the magic lies, the liquidity issue and so many other things. It will be done in such a way that nobody will really care about what the CBN is doing. In fact, the CBN will not have that incentive to always want to increase MPR if the other side is playing the game well. But now CBN is assumed to be looking at the whole responsibility as his, and so it's coming out big to arrest the situation. So I think that's where the conversation lies, beyond what the CBN is doing currently, and that speaks to the unemployment rate you have mentioned earlier.
And I wonder if those trade-offs are worth the all-important goal of economic stability because of the continuing lack of productivity that you have consistently touched on in your commentary. And that's why I want us to go again to the fiscal side. In talking about the considerations yesterday, the CBN governor says the committee recognizes the need to continue to work with fiscal authorities to bring down energy prices that are powering food inflation. And he also talked about, noting that release of FAC allocation increases the cash liquidity in banks and also has an impact on the exchange rate. And Mr. Emmanuel, touched on that earlier on. So I'm coming to you now. What does this say about what subnationals are doing when FAC allocation is increased? And does it have also perhaps a correlation with a lack of productivity in states? Because the economy is not just at the federal government level. The economy is in all the states of the federation as well. And does it also have an impact in continuing increase in unemployment that we also see in states as well?
Yeah, a very important question you asked, and the economy is not just at the federal level, but the federal level is what determines inflation. And if you look at the formula for calculating GDP, you have consumption or consumer spending, you have investment, you have government spending, you have net exports. What has improved basically is consumer spending has dropped because of purchasing power parity, investments, what you have are the FPIs coming in because of the MTB stop limits. Increase in interest rates again is going to raise the MTB stop limits up for all kinds of government debt and security. Government spending has not been fantastic because of the fact that debt servicing and other ancillary costs that does not speak to actual impact on the people when you look at the budget, because the cost of debt servicing, and the, how do I put it? I'll put it this way. So the government tells you that they no longer have subsidy, yeah, but NNPC has not remitted anything to the Federation account since January. The monies NNPC is supposed to remit to the Federation account is using to defray the cost of subsidy, including the NLNG dividends that I always tell people they seized, because constitutionally they don't have the power to seize it. That money is supposed to go to Federation account. The Federation account doesn't get enough revenue, tax to GDP ratio, non-tax to GDP ratio. They end up borrowing money, which is one of the reasons, for example, that I can see why the MPC will decide to raise the cash reserve ratio, because CBN has announced that they will resume overdraft of 5% based on the Ways and Means Section 38 of the CBN Act as a way to augment deficits in the budget. Then you have net export. Net exports has improved because, for example, the Dangote refinery and quite a number of other companies taking advantage of weak exchange rates. Yeah, but what has gone down is government spending. Investment has not been fantastic, especially non-speculative, long-term patient capital coming into Nigeria because of the macros. In 2025, we're expecting one or two IOCs, like, for example, we're expecting ExxonMobil to announce FID for oil and gas projects in deep water. Where one or two other companies are coming on stream with investments. So we'll see how that goes in 2025. But back to your point about states, there are critical factors that the federal government controls. And if the government does not do anything about stabilizing those macros. There isn't much the states can do. But yes, the governors have an obligation because, the CBN governor talked about how there's a link between FAC allocation and weak exchange rate at the end of every month when this thing is announced. I think it goes down to the anti-corruption agencies, and how they can manage that, and why you have so much dollar supply outside of official channels in Nigeria. It's an anomaly. Nigeria is one of the countries where you have dollar flowing freely in the black market. You don't see it anywhere. Anytime I go to South Africa, the government tells you that after 90 days, if you don't convert your foreign currencies you brought into the economy in cash into South Africa, and they will force you to convert it. Yeah, same in other countries I go to. It's an anomaly that you live in a country where there's so much millions of dollars flow in the black market. It just doesn't make any sense, And the state governors also has a lot to do, considering their FAC allocation has increased, with empowering their people and with creating jobs, not just building roads and flyovers, bridges, creating actual jobs for their people, giving out SME loans, and creating farm access roads, giving out farm inputs. Food inflation is very high, over 40%. Agriculture is one major state for state governors to focus on. And for me, I think the way to create intervention in the states for them is to create farm access roads, give out monies to cooperatives, give them loans, give them inputs, give them fertilizer, give them seeds, bring in tractors. That's the way to create impact. That will bring food inflation down. And food inflation is a major problem. Unfortunately, I don't think this can happen in all the states because, the North has a serious security issue, and especially in the Northwest and some parts of the Northeast. I think the security issues they have has to do a lot with illegal mining of gold. So that comes back to the federal government.
Interesting point you made there, and I'd like Mr. Omishakin to also speak to it about whether he agrees with you or not that the federal government has an impact on the macro to determine how the states, the subnationals, will also deal with the issues in their state. Mr. Omishakin.
Yeah, of course, I agree with that. Most of the policy instruments that will stabilize the economy, within the purview of the federal government. Even though I understand also that the economics of subnational in Nigeria is near zero. You don't have any conversation as to how the individual states are contributing to the national narratives. You don't have that, and for me, I think it's still part of the bigger conversation that we need to have. If you look at the structure of the Nigerian economy, in terms of the spatial structure, you understand that most of the states are like off the radar. You have huge money, FAC money, entering the state, but there is nothing they use the money to do productively, except to pay maybe 70% of the money for the workers in the state, and then they have something, and then it's gone. Go to different states in different, part of the country. So, but I still believe that the federal government has what it takes to direct. For instance, we're talking about MPR. That's from the federal government. I believe the federal government has the ability to sit down first and to look at where do we go first. One of the challenges I'm seeing now is the noises around what type of policy do we take, when do we take it, and when would they be manifested in terms of the results. Now, let me tell you something. A policy can look very good and interesting and promising, but if it's taken at the wrong time, everything will look very complex. I would expect the government to finalize this deal around the subsidy removal. It's painful, quite well. It's painful, but I think the economics of it also suggests that if you remove, we have about 40% or 42% of demand for FX from oil, PMS. So if the federal government sees to that and remove completely the subsidy, it will give the federal government the ability to harness or take care of that 40% of our FX, which is one of the major crises we are facing now. And that is one. That will be painful. But you can't do that when you don't think through the whole process of your policy interaction. You can't remove this and then the next day you are removing that, and then everything looks very complex. So what I expect from the side of the government is to have a bigger picture as to what needs to be done with our policy synchronization. We don't really have any big conversations around that. Number one, currently this MBS, Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, will be releasing different data around rebasing. You have the GDP rebase, CPI rebase, the same inflation we're talking about now. And you have the national labor survey, or living standard survey coming up. And this will change the whole conversation we are having now.
All those figures will be coming down.
Will be coming, as in the report will be coming up.
And I'm saying rebasing will mean that the figures, because unemployment used to be...
Okay, so for instance, if you rebase the GDP now, we assume now that you have a bigger size.
Okay, so for GDP will increase.
Yeah, because
for unemployment, I'm just saying that it will look like we're in a good position when the rebase happens.
No, it depends on which indicator you are looking at.
Okay, so unemployment, for example, when we rebased or changed the methodology, it came down. By the way, they didn't release the one for Q4 last year. All we saw was Q3 last year, now Q1
I think they promised to do that now. So how? I think they promised to do that. So I mean, for instance, if you have, and you are right, you have some indicator that will suggest like we are doing. For instance, what's it called now? Our debt to GDP, any rate along GDP will look better, right? It will be, maybe we are doing around 49 or 50% now. Then when the GDP increases, we'll likely be doing something like maybe 30 something or 40. And that might give the government the idea to always want to increase. So that in itself is a bigger challenge to planning. So there is a need for strategy from the policy side that will make use of the updates we are having from the data. So if we bury our heads into discussing NPR, and now we have all these updates, boom,
you might get lost. This is my real question, pardon me, Bukola.
Yeah.
Now, when you talked about FX now, I wonder if Nigerians are really ready for the removal of subsidy in that way that a lot of people think about it. Just when recently now the price of petrol increased, you see how much it has increased the burden on Nigerians. And I think that there will be a lot of demand for FX if we are importing the refined products. But if we're producing locally with Dangote and the Port Harcourt refinery, I want to imagine that we will not be using FX to buy petrol from them, since we have the Naira
liquidity we improve from that side.
I'm still sticking to this subsidy removal bit, whether we should go the whole hog or still try to understand that people are struggling and do it bit by bit. I know economists don't want to hear that.
No, we are all people.
For economists, just remove this thing once and for all. But we see how people are groaning. There's a CNG bit which is not as fast as we expect it to. And so people convert to CNG and they're still charging the same price as though they were buying petrol, right? But my question is this, as we begin to wind down for both of you, the short-term interventions. Because you said that you can't remove one thing and also remove another, and then you leave businesses and people wondering, how do we breathe, right? When we're meant to let the poor breathe. So what are those short-term measures? You talked about some sectors that contribute to the GDP. There are a lot of them, but they are not contributing as much as they ought to. So maybe need to focus on them and pump something into them. I don't know what that is, but for both of you, Mr. Emmanuel and Mr. Omishaki, short-term interventions for businesses. I don't know if Mr. Emmanuel wants to go first, so we can come to Mr. Omishaki. Short-term interventions, please.
Well, short-term interventions, to be honest with you, there are no easy solutions to the problem. This is because, look, Kayode, I don't subscribe to firefighting or band-aids. I like hard work, heavy lifting. Let's tackle it from the roots.
But that's you, Mr. Emmanuel. You know, you're a big man. But for the average Nigerian, maybe they like that, something to just keep them. A lot of them live from hand to mouth, you know.
We're going around in circles. You see, this talk about consumer loans, one of the reasons why the banks in Nigeria don't like consumer loans is because you don't have big data infrastructure that helps banks to do what they call origination and discovery. You know, that's why there is a lot of collateralization of fiscal assets for lending in Nigeria. You know, banks a lot of times are blind when it comes to small businesses. So they are not able to offer credit because they don't understand the history of the businesses. A lot of times they don't have access to their financials. There's no corporate governance. These are the problems that you have to deal with from an institutional level. Inflation is high, so interest rate is high. So if you tell the government, if you say the government should give you single-digit loan, somebody is going to have to pay for the difference. Government is going to have to pay for the difference of maybe 23% or 22% for giving you 9% loan. Where is it going to come from? You know, so when we say short-term interventions, it's firefighting and it's band-aid. Okay, about your question, very important question you asked on subsidy. I think before we even start to interrogate subsidy removal, we have to really ask ourselves, do we actually consume 55 million liters of PMS a day? That's the first question, because that's the basis for under-recovery. Yeah, Nigeria's true north for daily consumption is not above 35 million liters, because between 2002, when it was 21 million liters, and 2009, you had a compound average growth rate of 11%. You can't tell me that went up 234% between 2009 and 2024 without any data or empirical evidence to back it. Okay, so if you interrogate the actual daily consumption of petrol in Nigeria, you begin to, decouple how much do we actually need to pay subsidy, number one. Number two, if we remove subsidy, what is the actual landing price of PMS? And number three, do we actually need to import petrol? No, we don't need to import petrol because we have a brand new refinery in Lagos that can deliver 25 million liters of PMS daily and is ramping up, and at full capacity will be able to produce 52 million liters of PMS. I expect that by the end of Q4 of 2024, the Dangote refinery will have ramped up to about 90% capacity utilization. I think right now it can deliver over 30 million liters of PMS on a daily basis. The question is, does the government actually have the wherewithal to take it? Do they have the cash? If they don't have the cash and they have to do an LC, at what finance cost are they raising the LC to be able to pay? What is the offshore Lagos price? What is the ex-refinery price? And what is the actual landing price after distribution and margins has been added for PMS? These are the questions we have to interrogate, for us to understand what our true level is, for PMS in Nigeria.
Fantastic point there, and we await those figures. It's important to be transparent. Mr. Mishaki, your final words on this.
Very, very simple. We must understand the current state, and we also need to understand the challenges we've been facing with short-term or in fact interventions. The most important approach I want to advise is that borders on sectoral intervention, specific sectoral intervention, and that is agriculture. Intervention to improve productivity and efficiency will help the issues around inflation and interest rates. Inflation today is like saying products price, as simple as that. Yes, we know we have the power, the electricity and so many energy stuff, but it's mainly food. So the short term for me is just sectoral intervention, most importantly. Any other intervention might not work in terms of what do you want to do with businesses. It's cool to say that, but how do you do it? We don't have data, I said, we don't have the data framework to do that. Before you know, the next year you'll be hearing that so many has embezzled so. The best thing to do is to make sure that we address this food inflation. And that is why the people comes. People may not really talk when the prices of fuel is so high, but they have something to eat. It's because we have so many things going on at the same time. That's why people are crying. So for me, intervention is very important at the immediate for us to move ahead.
And the curious thing is that it's a committee of economists like you, like Mr. Emmanuel, and we really hope that they listen in on these conversations and it informs their decisions. Perhaps at the next meeting.
I think they are all listening. It's just that it's not that easy when to govern this.
They are listening, but they do not agree, evidently. But we'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Olusegun Omishaki, I'm correct, and Mr. Kelvin Emmanuel. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So when we return from this break, we'll be looking at rates yet again, but this time at another sector that affects you one way or the other. So stay with us, we'll be right back.
few options for people who want to travel by air. They either go by road, jettison the trip altogether and maybe do virtual, or try to add money to it, sometimes times 2, times 3, just so they can catch that flight and do business or personal things. And this, it didn't used to be like this really. Fast or rewind to some months, years back, you're talking about airfares, 50,000 naira, but now times 2, times 3. So what exactly is going on? Because this has a knock-on effect on business, productivity, and the economy at large. We have a roundtable on this one, so we're sort of flying first class this morning. Joining us in our Lagos studio is Mr. Chris Eligbe, who's an aviation analyst, and 2 gentlemen join us virtually. Mr. Tony Ukachukwu, who's the founder and CEO of Aviators Africa and convener Nigeria-South Africa Aviation Forum, as well as Mr. Lumide Owayo, who's the General Secretary, Aviation Safety Roundtable Initiative. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the morning brief.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Good to have you. As I always say, we'll fasten our seatbelt and jump on this flight, really. I hope it won't be a bumpy one, because we really need to understand what is going on. For a lot of people, they just see the fares increasing and increasing, and they wonder, how long will this keep happening? But we need to know the story behind the figures. And I'll begin with you, Mr. Eligbe. What exactly is going on with the aviation sector? What is going up comes down, but this one keeps going up.
Thank you very much. In fairness to the airline operators, they're facing quite a lot of challenges. The economy, access to foreign exchange, rising cost of fuel, rising cost of operation. Everything is there. And then, for quite some time, maybe from 2017, the issue of wet lease was a major problem.
Wet lease, you said?
Wet lease.
What is that, for those who don't understand?
Wet lease, we call it wet lease. In aviation, we call it ACMI, aircraft, crew, maintenance, and insurance. You pay for all of them. You don't use your own crew. You don't pay the insurance, everything they give to you, you pay the cost. And that is quite high. What is paid pilots outside there is by far higher than what is paid. That is the technical crew, and what you even pay for the aircraft and for every other thing. So you have no time to manage it. All that you want to do is manage operations. So that added the cost, and that is why it is heartwarming that the government, particularly the aviation minister, the vice president, and the finance minister, and the chief judge of the FCT, just about 2 weeks ago, signed not the CTC. People make a mistake to say Cape Town Convention. No, Cape Town Convention was signed and domesticated in 2007. It was Shegun Demure, Dr. Demure, that made it. Was signed 2007, and by March 2007, that document was deposited in Udroit's room and then filed in international registry in Dublin in 2007 July. So Cape Town Convention became operational. Nigeria was even helping other countries, Sierra Leone, Libya, Guinea, Egypt, to be able to operate the Cape Town Convention, to understand what it is. But by 2007, two Nigerian airlines, First Nation and Top Brass, violated the Cape Town Convention. Immediately they violated the Cape Town Convention, Nigeria became blacklisted. And once we were blacklisted, airlines could no longer get aircraft on dry lease. That was when the wet lease challenge came in. So one is happy. It's a major effort and success that we were able to return Nigeria to what it was
So we're back to dry lease now.
We are back, yes, we can now begin dry lease.
So all this while, all of the airline operators, the crew and all of that, were not theirs in that sense?
No, they were not there once you do a wet lease, except except if you bought your aircraft. Like I know that some airlines, operators were able to buy their aircraft.
And that's quite expensive. How many of them are able to even do that?
I think, I know that APs bought some. I know that when Eric was operating, Eric did that. I know that also that Ibom, some of his aircraft bought. He has some leased, but he has
so it's a mix.
Yes, it's a mix. I also think that Overland bought one or two of his aircraft. Overland is a small aircraft. It's not probably very much known, but it's a niche carrier.
It's still an operation and it's doing some work.
It's a niche carrier. But all others that came in, they were all on wet lease.
Let me go to Mr. Okachukwu, because you've provided a fantastic background to this, even the historical context. And I want to push this forward and find out from your own observation and experience. So is it a challenge with the model of business being done? I know that there are regulatory constraints, right, as he has talked about. But still, we've seen, models being introduced in other climes that have beaten down the price of airfares. Because at the end of the day, you want people to fly. You want money to come in so you can, keep your business sustainable. So is it a challenge with the model, with the regulatory context? Is it a challenge with the Nigerian economic context? How do we apportion the challenge to these factors?
I think it's a combination of all what you just mentioned. The operating environment is not very favorable. The regulatory policies sometimes in some situations are stifling. And then the general climate in Nigeria, doing business in Nigeria. So I think it's a combination of a whole lot. However, just like Mr. Aligbe has alluded, there are concerted effort by the President Minister to begin to unlock these areas to make sure that there is a favorable condition operating environment for the airlines. And this Cape Town practice direction that was signed on September 12th, that have moved up from 45 to 70.5% by the Aviation Working Group, is a move in the right direction to now enable us to go back to being able to dry lease, because the wet lease is part of what is crippling airlines in Nigeria. And they do this at high premium because Nigeria, just like Mr. Aligbe has said, has been blacklisted, and we are seen like a nation with high risk. So anybody that wants to do business with Nigeria will make sure that they put it at a very high premium, to take their chances at taking the high risk. So it's high risk, high yield. So this practice direction has been signed on September 12 by the working group that moved us, by the Federal High Court. Is a move in the right direction, and I think it poses a very positive change and direction for the operating environment for the Nigerian aviation airline operators.
So let's take it now to Mr. Nwayo to, just sort of pick it up from there by also reacting to what some other aviation analysts are saying, that this CTC practice direction is one part of the conversation, but there's also need to build infrastructure. What are your thoughts on that? And can Nigerian airlines really, compete favorably with other airlines operating in the country, foreign airlines, without a review of bilateral air services agreement that will, sort of expand their capacity beyond the shores of the country, perhaps to other African countries?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Let me greet Captain Chris there, since we're on the flight, and he has captained his flight. Anyway, congratulations to Nigeria. We have joined other countries in taking the practice direction. Yes, we had issues in the past based on one or two airlines, and it showed that it's not a Nigerian problem alone. If it was a Nigerian problem, those other countries would not have asked the practice, signed the practice direction in place. So it has come now. It's now left for us to make effective use of it. Like Captain Chris said, I'm usually captain for this program. The beauty of it is now we're going to go back to the dry lease. Now with the dry lease, it gets the cost of leasing goes down. You have more employment for Nigerians, and if you have more employment, then you have more revenue for the industry. So that's the positive part of it. Then the other part, like asked Bukola, is Now, for the airlines, is it woo-woo? I heard one of the people saying it's a revolution. No, I don't think it's a revolution yet. But there's also a part, and that part is that of the corporate governance, the ability to operate effectively, because leasing an aircraft does not make you rich and also affect profitability. You need to manage it effectively over a time. It should not be a permanent business. Either you are leasing it to own it, or you are leasing for a certain period, but you are planning for your own aircraft. It's not something you keep permanently with you and expect that your bottom line will not be hit. And that's another part that we need to work on within the industry to see that this when we start getting this dry leasing, we do not see it as the permanent solution, but as the one is always a temporary. I'm coming to the last part of your question. You talked about our ability to compete with the foreign airlines. I think we are not yet there. And we can only get there if we begin to build gradually. And I am in support of the process that IBOM is doing, building technical blocks one after the other to see how they can meet up. We must avoid that rush to get a mega carrier, but else we fall into the same problems that we had that have not done in the past. We must just begin to build gradually and see if our activities and operations, processes in place can attract this foreign airlines, one of them to our foreign investors to participate in any of our carriers. Definitely, airlines cannot be alone without some form of investment, external investment. That is an area that I'm looking forward to. And it can only be done when we begin to put the necessary rules, laws, and practices in place, and we will get there.
So I'll take it to you now, Mr. Liga, in the studio. Captain, in the studio. I'd like you to speak also to the issue of bilateral air service agreement, particularly as it affects this ongoing conversation between Air Peace and the United Kingdom, with the minister writing to the United Kingdom that it should allow Air Peace to land in Heathrow Airport, or otherwise it will invoke the laws. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you. Sometimes mostly I don't like to engage the ministers when they are doing what they do, because sometimes I like them to finish what they are doing, because for them, for all of us, is a learning process. He will learn, he will understand it. Even the airline, Heathrow is one of the most expensive airports to fly into. Heathrow, one of the most expensive airports. Slots, aviation bridges, all those things, so that even when you get that chance, you wonder whether you can fly into it. But I will tell you this, the truth of it is that you ask whether our airlines can compete with foreign airlines. No, none of airlines today can effectively compete with foreign airlines. And it will take a long time. There are 5 levels of operation in the airline industry. The topmost level is alliance level. There are 3 global alliances: SkyTeam, Star Alliance, and One World. All of them operate about over 2,000 flights, frequencies daily to various countries. And they have up to 20 countries, 25 countries. Star Alliance is the largest. It has about 26 members, and all those. They are all global alliances. That's a thing. In the aviation industry is one area where globalization has succeeded. The first one is communications, telecommunication. You can communicate to anybody from anywhere you are. Aviation industry is seamless travel. When you put your baggage here, until you get to the other end, even if you pass through 5 airports, that's seamless operation. That's at the level of global alliance. The second level, below it, you have what you have associate members of partners of alliance members. You are not alliance member, but an associate of alliance member. It's like when KLM bought into Kenya Airways. Kenya Airways become an associate of an alliance member because KLM is an alliance member. It's the second level, but it gives you access to wider network. Then you come down to the next thing, interlining and code share. This started in 1947. post-World War. IATA introduced this in 1947. That for a long time, but the airline operation started 1933, point to point, like tuke. Carry here, drop here. If you want to travel beyond that, you go and buy a ticket and try to check yourself in. That's not what happens these days. All Nigerian airlines are operating in this archaic level, the tuke level, from point to point. And no airline will survive on point to point. No airline will survive on stand-alone airline. Nigeria Airways, even Nigeria Airways started on point to point because that time, and then by 1976, it started with alliances and interlining. But by 1986, it was chased out of the IATA clearinghouse because it defaulted in payment. It returned to point to point. Nigeria Airways started the part of the decline of Nigeria Airways. All our airlines have operated point to point. The present airline, biggest line, thank to God, is point to point. There's no airline that will survive. And our airline.
So with point to point, you can't land at an international airport, at Heathrow Airport.
You can land, but you're not making any money. It's those airlines that I can transfer my passenger to another airline just seamlessly. So you derive revenue from that relationship.
So if it can, don't you think that what's happening between Airpeace and the UK is an unfair competition practice, as Airpeace has been, projecting it to be?
What do you consider unfair?
Because Virgin Atlantic and other airlines, foreign airlines, can land at national airports in Nigeria and, in fact, in other destinations.
No,
so they're not accorded. Our own airlines are not accorded that privilege.
What I'm telling you is that you can ask for that, but so much has happened in the aviation industry for a long time, for quite some time. There are airports in the world that have become congested. Congested airport, they created slots. So if you want to buy, you buy slots. That's why I say it's a very expensive airport. When I wanted to fly Abuja, London, he had to buy slots. They were selling slots for him. A pair of slots at £6,000. Imagine if you buy a pair of slots, that is fly in and fly out. If you are operating six times to UK on Heathrow, and you buy a pair of slots, even it's no longer £6,000. This is years ago. It's about almost going to 10,000. So if you buy it and you're going to pay 6 times 10, that's 60,000. How much are you making? The airline industry is slim margin. So you're killing yourself. But it is good to fight for rights if you are going to use the right, good. But if you are not going to, let it remain as an unloaded rifle. You have that right. But I'm not seeing it as something that will be cheering and heartwarming. Right. And it's not unfair practice because airports are not indicated in the BASA.
All right. Quite a lot of moving parts here. Now we've talked about the foreign travel, but there's also the domestic travel as well. And I think two things Nigerians want to know, maybe simple as we can simplify it, is when can we begin to buy tickets for maybe the 70,000 naira that it was last year August, and then basically how much can we even get to, if we can't get to the 79,000, how soon can we get that? But we need to go on a break now. We'll come to Mr. Okachukwu and Mr. Onwayo to speak to these issues in a moment. Just stay with us. Plus thousand to over 120,000 naira in space of 1 year, and it looks like the fares are going higher and higher daily. That's the reality in the aviation sector. And this morning we're trying to get behind all of that and see how we can pull down these fares while keeping the planes afloat and safe. Very important. We have with us Mr. Chris Saligwe, Mr. Tony Okachukwu, and Mr. Olumide Onwayo, all speaking to these issues from different angles, really. So let me come to you, Mr. Okachukwu. While not compromising on safety and all of that, we have to keep our planes in the air. Simple question. So when are we going to get back? Because you've commended the minister and the work he's been doing and how it will reduce the fares. So how soon can we begin to buy our tickets for 70,000. I'm not even asking for the 40,000 or what the 20,000 used to be years ago. 70,000, what it was last year. How soon do you think that can happen with all of the work being done by the minister? Or you think that that's not feasible anymore?
It's feasible, but I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. We must face facts. The aviation industry is dollar denominated, and everything they do in our sector, the aviation sector, is around the dollar. And if we have FX issues, it directly impacts on the operators or the aviation industry. And then they come to another moving part again, which is the jet A fuel. I mean, it accounts for close to 60% of operating costs. And then you can see where we are with fuel and and the whole issue around NNPC. So basically, when you look at just these two factors that I've mentioned, it will give rise to high cost of ticket, because the operators must stay in business, and not only stay in business, they must make sure that their operation is safe and and they don't compromise in any shape or form. So it's a very tough situation for the airline operators. We put it out, just jokingly, that they're in the intensive care unit, because they need the full support of a favorable environment for them to be able to work favorably and be able to lower these prices. If that doesn't happen, there won't be any magic for the price of tickets to come down. So there are a lot of moving parts, but the average traveler will not understand. But I've just given you some key areas to make you understand that with FX, everything in the aviation industry is dollar denominated. So with FX going the way it's going to be difficult. The parts, the maintenance, everything they do is with Forex. So, and if Forex don't come down, it directly impacts on the operating costs. And again, airlines must pass their costs to the consumer, who now is the passenger, unfortunately. So to answer your question, it's not going to come down anytime soon, except we begin to look at these moving parts and begin to solve it one after the other. And then, of course, we must know that aviation is a socioeconomic catalyzer. I want to use this opportunity to state that unless we get the aviation sector right, our economy, the economy of Nigeria, will continue to be impacted, because the aviation sector is critical to economic development. Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Nwayo, if they don't see reduced fares, they wonder all of the activity, all of the movement, they will think it's just movement without progress, right? Because that's the bottom line for people, being able to afford this, to do business, to be productive and contribute to the economic growth of the country. So for you, do you share those sentiments as well? And what are the gains then that we can look at and say, okay, fine, if the airfares are not coming down, at least there are gains in other aspects. We can talk about the quality of the facilities at our airport and the rest. What are those gains that we can then look to if we say that the fares won't come down anytime soon?
Thank you. I just want to say something on the airpiece issue. Airpiece have been asking for the permission to operate into Heathrow for more than 2 years. And an airline that have operated for about 10 years should not, they cannot downplay their reasons or whatever plans they have and why they need Heathrow. And if they say it's Heathrow they wanted, it's Heathrow they should get. I feel I am in support of the minister's move. It has happened before. It happened to them in Dubai, whereby they were sent to Charger until when the minister came up, put his foot down, and the Dubai route that was not available suddenly became available. Yes, the bilateral agreement says Heathrow and any other airport in London. But if they say they want Heathrow, then they must find a way around it. Unfortunately, we don't have another international airport in Lagos, so we cannot push them out of MMA. Because the agreement says Lagos, Abuja, so that's on that. But I think the EP says that's what they want. They look at their cost component, and if they say if they insist on it, I think we should just let them be and have them let them see how they pan that through through it. Yes, we have some airlines have done that. I've done that in the past and have failed. But I don't want that failure hunger to be on us, because of those failed airlines, their cost in England is so high now that they are made to deposit money for services not even provided ahead, just because they want to safeguard their own assets and operations. But that said, the issue of the ticket fare, I wonder when we keep looking at only aviation. Aviation is not alone, it's not an island. We are part of the economy. So when you look at the ticket, begin to look at what is the fuel cost, what's the power cost, what are the other cost components, even within, not of the top of the dollar, which is the major cost component of the industry. They are all going up, and if they're all going up, definitely tickets, it's inevitable for the fares not to go up. And if you're talking about looking at it coming down soon, I do not see that coming quickly. What I can see is you can only see that kind of fares when we allow. If we can allow a new set of registration of civil scheduled operators, we are looking at them, the lower cadre, maybe the 20-30 seaters, who can operate to this airports that have been termed unviable. The airports that are not presently not having more than 1 or 2 services. When you have the smaller aircraft go there, then you can begin to look at that kind of fare. But at the present rate of exchange, and with the present liter per fuel, with the present cost of power, with the interest rate from the banks, then it will be a miracle. I want to go to Abuja for the last 2 months now. I'm preparing myself because of the cost of the ticket. I want to ensure that when I go, I'll be able to do a lot of things and come back. The days of just traveling and traveling and not making enough plans are over, and we cannot isolate aviation from the system. But then there are a lot of work that needs to be done. When we get to that section, I will say something about it. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Nwaya, the feeling is mutual. When we want to book our flights, we think twice about it. I will try to, book like a month ahead, such that it will not be so expensive. But let me quickly follow up on the exchange rate matter, and I'm bringing it to you now, Captain Alibi. At the airline, you're still laughing. At the association level, are the airline operators making a case to the minister, that they be giving concession on foreign exchange, such that the importation of aviation fuel, can be bought at, the convenience of the airline operators? And that apart, the promise of domestic production of aviation fuel by our local refinery now, Dangote refinery, is it any potential? Does it offer any prospects for the long-term reduction of, prices of ticket for Nigerians? Those two issues.
Thank you very much. I think the airline, the operators, the airline subsector, for me, they are not asking for the right favors that will help them over period in time. I have talked that the airline is at infant level. In fact, they are suffering from infantilism. And what do you know? Ask for an infant industry protection, kind of. We are at the buzzer level. We're operating, like I told you, at a level of 1933 to 1947. Between that, we are not there. So, going forward, they will ask. I don't see there will be any difficulty in saying CBN, make an allocation of about 200 million annually to the airline for maintenance, for spares, and for some of that, for those things. So that, because their problem is that sometimes they have the Naira, but they can't access foreign exchange to maintain the aircraft. So most of the aircraft are on the ground. They are out there. So, and that has affected the ability to operate. Our integrity, that is schedule integrity, is below 62. 2 years ago, we saw the schedule integrity was about 62. Our in Ghana is at 92.
Just to be clear, schedule integrity is, you say you are taking off
at the time, and this thing, yes, you take off at the time you want to take off.
Not 5 hours after.
No, not 5 hours.
That's not schedule integrity. Yes. 6 times within 1 day.
Yes, generally. And what has happened is that flights are cancelled, taken out from airports, and you are not told. The airlines don't tell you. They keep the schedule they have operated, even when they don't have enough aircraft to do that. So you book, so we no longer fly there. Oh, we have sought our flight from there. That's the problem. So they have their own planning, their own operational modes. It's not the right one. But they tell you they have, like you say, problem of corporate governance. It is endemic in the industry. There's no corporate governance. And you see, this is why even foreign airlines cannot interline with our local airlines. Because before they interline, they will do a due diligence. Most of them, there's financial opacity. You don't have nothing transparent. There's no corporate governance. And then their processes are not what they should be. Otherwise, in our country, we are large enough. We've encouraged them, look, if I buy your ticket and you cancel that flight, transfer me to the next airline. For so many years, we have talked about it. They don't want to do it. So if you don't do it at the domestic level, no foreign airlines will give you. If they give you a passenger to transfer to another place, and you delay your flight, your cancel flight, there's something we call carrier liability. The other liability, the airline that brought you, it is better for me to sue an airline, foreign airline that brought you, because I get more money from him than leave you. So
these systemic issues do not make them eligible to make a case before the minister?
No, it doesn't. But they can. I think the issue of they need that foreign exchange. They need it, and it should not, no palliative should be given them, but that money, earn it, and you're able to do. Central bank can do that. And I like what just happened. We can see it took the vice president, it took the minister, it took the chief justice of a team to handle the CTC process. It took a team. That is what I think that should be done. A team, I mean the economic team, led by the vice president, they do come to the industry, not just the operators, whatever. There are stakeholders in the industry. Call all of us, say, look, what are the challenges? The airlines need assistance because that will help all of us. If they have more aircraft, now I think should reduce the distance. Now they can do dry lease. Right. They can get pilots, they manage better, they will manage better, but it will not, if you drop it so drastically, that is when they start. They haven't started. Right. Again, they talk about infrastructure. I am happy with what is happening in the airport subsector. I think the new management of FAN has done something, has changed the management style. He has empowered airport managers to begin to work. They're not to wait to write to headquarters. We want approval for this. You get the now empowerment. And Port Harcourt Airport, that was ruled as one of the worst for some time. It's
now getting better.
Yeah, they just got an award in South Africa by a reputable industry.
That's interesting. But we always have our eyes on these facilities, the bathrooms, for example. And I don't even want to go there right now. The smell, the air conditioning, the comfort. It's like the airport is telling you, don't stay here. You just pass through. You can't really sit and relax. And you've been to other climes. You want to stay back at the airport until you want to catch a flight. Yeah. So let me get the final words from Mr. Okechukwu and Mr. Nwayo. This one, particularly the facilities. We can't talk about the aviation sector. We'll talk safety, we'll talk the fares, but we'll also talk about the facilities. And that is like that is a selling point of a country. Once you get into the airport, you can tell what the culture is about that, what the ethos is. So let's wind down on that point. We have just about a minute to wind down, gentlemen. So Mr. Okechukwu and Mr. Nwayo. Mr. Okechukwu first.
Thank you very much. So basically, there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done. Airport is a window to the country. So when you arrive at airports, you can get a sense of how the country is like. Thank God there's a new administration of FAN, and they're looking at, they've done some things with the E-Wing at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, E-Wing, and I'm sure they have other plans to, replicate that in other airports. But facility, just like you mentioned, there are basics for an airline traveler. A seamless facilitation and the ambience of the airport is the least that any passenger passing through such airport can ask for. And I think there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done for us to get to that level where when people arrive in Nigeria or they are leaving Nigeria, they get a sense of Nigeria is a working country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Onyo. Your last thought on this.
Okay, yeah. When there are no passengers, there are no airlines. And when there are no airlines, there are no airports or agencies. And when there are no airports or agencies, there's no aviation. And when there's no aviation, there's no revenue or there's no or economy. So we need to work on this. There's something fundamentally wrong. That you have the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, the regulator, among the highest revenue generator for the government. You have the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria among the first 10, these two agencies, and the organizations that they are supposed to be providing services are all running into problems and barely managing to breathe. So there's a system in place that needs to be tweaked. We must be like the Indians. If the Indians could move the domestic travel from about 40 million to 300 million in 12 years, could move in the international travel from 30 million to 70 million. Then we must work towards that, because the more the passengers that are flying, the higher the revenue, the bigger the employment, and the better for the economy.
And that's a great place. That's a fantastic place to anchor, and I think that just resonates a lot. We have to thank you so much. Wish you had more time, or as with every flight, you have to, land a taxi and then go about your business. Mr. Olumide Owanyo, General Secretary, Aviation Safety Roundtable Initiative, thank you so much. Mr. Tony Okachukwu, Founder, CEO, Aviators Africa, as well as aviation analyst, Mr. Chris Aligbe. We appreciate you, gentlemen, for your time on the program.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. We have landed safely, but not to worry. Another flight is taking off in just about a few minutes. Sunrise Daily is next. Stay with Channels Television. I'm Kayode Okikulu.
Well, it takes a lot to get the airplane to fly with pride. We hope a lot more is done to ensure that in the future. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.